How am I structuring my classroom and my time with them to show them that some things deserve ceremony and some things are transcendent and very important, and we must do them all together because they change us and they bind us together. And then what language am I giving them that points to some sort of idea that is soul-stirring, life-changing, and then how can we continue to use that language together to encourage each other and reinforce those connections and that those shared values.
It's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
So now we would like to talk a little bit more about culture and classroom management.
Sure.
Those are two things that walk together, right? So when you talk about classroom culture, what exactly do you mean and why is it so important?
Sure. So when I talk about classroom culture, what I'm alluding to or what I'm sort of driving towards is that our classrooms have an atmosphere, they have habits, they reflect the attitudes and the affections of the teacher. And so those things sort of create an environment that the students enter into, and they start to understand who that teacher is, what she loves, and they adjust their behaviors accordingly. And so we can't really help but have a classroom culture. And my challenge to teachers is usually, is it what you want? Have you created the classroom culture that is communicating to your students the things that you think are most important about the curriculum that you teach and the gods you worship? Or have you passed on to them things that are sort of irrelevant and peripheral that really just reflect your own personality? And I think classroom culture is very important because it's the source of life that gives the curriculum the ability to have its efficacy or to be its vitality. Like, so your curriculum will only have so much energy or power in your students or for your students if there isn't a culture that undergirds it, that sort of says, these things are beautiful and noble and good, and I love them, and I want you to love them. I want you to see how they connect, and I know how they connect, and I'm excited about how they connect. And that is what the teacher can pass on to the students. That's very intangible, but makes all the difference. So I was recently just talking to a student, and I was asking him about his favorite teacher. And he very openly said, like, this is what he does, and this is what he says, and he's interested in the same things I'm interested in. And he asks these questions that really make me think hard about how things work and why they connect. And that's all culture that teacher is creating for that student, and it's making the learning experience that much more impactful and lifelong for that student.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about the habits, the culture.
Yes.
But one of the things that you say is about this enculturation, the power of culture, power of the habits to enculturate our students. How does this happen, and how does it contribute to the ordering of their lives and the formation of the character?
So the habits of the classroom really sort of create the environment that the students will learn in, but they also sort of create a microcosm of the world for that student. So I've said before that when students enter your classroom, they're entering into your world. Like, your classroom is a representation of how you think the world works and why you think your students exist, what you think the point of the time that you have with them, like what is the point that we have, like what are we doing? What are we doing here with these 55 minutes that we have together? So you are creating that sort of microcosm, and you're situating them in a narrative. And so that's how it sort of enculturates. Like, you're passing on this understanding of why we learn, why things are important, how the world works, how our students are supposed to perceive reality, and how they're supposed to know what is true, and then what they're supposed to do about it. And so all of that is the work of culture. The curriculum will tell them the things they need to know, but it's the culture that will help them understand how those things connect and then what they're supposed to do about what they know, right? So there's this habituation of mind and body towards what we know to be true that David Hicks says is the whole point of education, that we're habituating body and mind to behave according to what we know to be true. And so that is that's largely a culture job. You can read the stories with them. You can present the cultural artifacts that show them an example of what is true and what they should do about it. But it's the attitude and the affection of the teacher. It's the wisdom of the teacher. It's the embodiment of the teacher that brings those stories to life for that student and helps that student understand how to use their imagination to grasp and like sort of comprehend what that story means for them.
Part of performing a classical classroom culture involves teaching beyond the textbook. How can this be done in practice?
Right. I understand that seems sort of overwhelming, right? Like, well, I have a hard enough time just getting through the material that they've given me. I don't really know that I can do much else. And I think the reason why I say that teachers should transcend the textbook is that I do want them to be aware of the role of culture in the classroom, and that education is largely enculturation, that when we are educating students, we are passing on a culture from one generation to another generation. And part of that culture is sharing with them what we believe to be true and what we value as a people. And those values are passed on, and then they become a shared value. And then when a community has a set of shared values, they behave in accordance with those shared values, and then they have a culture, then they have norms. And then the people within that society know how to treat each other and know how to behave. And they also understand where they're going. Like they can grasp the transcendent nature of who they are and why we exist.
Going back a little bit to classroom culture, could you speak a bit more about the 3 avenues of classroom culture?
Right. So when I realized I had a classroom that was working, that I was seeing these culture moments sort of pop up, I started to think through, like, well, why is it working? Like, what are we doing? And the reason that I realized that we had a culture that was working was because something that we had done together, or something that I had shared with them, showed up someplace where I hadn't asked it to be there. Like, I wasn't planning for it. I hadn't prepared for it. I wasn't even expecting it. And the students spontaneously and of their own desire and volition reproduced something from before. So something we did together had become who they are. They had internalized it, and then they knew what to do with it. They knew how to use that phrase or to make that illusion on their own. And that's how I knew I had a classroom culture that was working. And so I started to think through, like, well, how did that happen? Like, what did we do? And I kind of felt like they could be, I guess maybe the atmosphere or the habits of the classroom could be funneled into 3 different sort of directions. And I thought that they could be funneled into embodied values, shared experiences, and common language. So the teacher embodies what she loves in front of her students, and she invites her students into that love. And then she creates these shared experiences through routine practices or classroom liturgies where all the students are experiencing the same thing together, and they're having this moment of understanding, of being drawn towards what David Hicks calls is the ideal type, or the tyrannizing image. Like, they're being drawn towards something transcendent together. And then through that process of that shared experience, they're also getting common language. They're starting to understand that these words map to this idea, or this transcendent, this transcendent, like this is a symbol for something else, right? So they're starting to understand that when When we say something like further up and further in from Narnia, what we're really talking about is going deeper into Christ, like going deeper and deeper into our knowledge of who he is and therefore who we are and why we exist, and that there's always more, that God is eternal and that our experience of him will be everlasting. So 4 words, further up and further in, became common language that actually represented a whole set of ideas. And when they could make that connection and then give it back to me or give it back to each other and on their own at the right time and in the right way, that's enculturation. They're really understanding what something needs, and they're being transformed by it. And so that to me is how teachers can start building classroom culture and focusing on classroom culture, is really beginning to understand, what am I embodying? What experiences am I creating for our students to do things together? How am I structuring my classroom and my time with them to show them that some things deserve ceremony and some things are transcendent and very important, and we must do them all together because they change us and they bind us together. And then what language am I giving them that points to some sort of idea that is soul-stirring, life-changing, and then how can we continue to use that language together to encourage each other and reinforce those connections and that those shared values.
As teachers, we many times we hear that, but when we get into practice, we feel like everything is important.
Yes.
And then we struggle with time constraints, right?
Yes.
So many teachers or many administrators complain that we don't have time to do it all. We don't have time to cover everything or to teach everything that is important. So what would be your advice for teachers to manage curricular demands while still choosing what's most important in teaching?
I think that all teachers feel that crunch, right? I don't think that we will ever be free from feeling the oppressive nature of time. And it's important for us as human beings and teachers to understand that there is the progression of time, the time that we watch go by on the clock as we're managing our classroom. There's the 55 minutes that we have with our students, let's say. But then there's also these chronos moments of time, like, So the chronos time is the time that ticks on the clock, that is marching forward sequentially. And then we have kairos moments of time, which are like unique moments, special moments of something higher that make the regular time stand out, right? So there's this contrast, and teachers are very aware of the chronos time. We're always watching the clock, and it would behoove us to be more aware of how we can have more of the kairos moments where we're very connected to our students, and we've created this atmosphere for true learning, and we see in America, we call them aha moments. Like, you see an aha moment on your student's face where they have connected to the material, and something that you are trying to teach them, they have learned. They have grasped it and they have learned it. That's the tension of the classroom, is that we are always trying to manage the clock, but we really want these learning moments. And so I think just submitting yourself to the fact that you will never have enough of the chronos time, but what you're really striving for is the kairos. And
We can look for eternity.
yes. So I think maybe understanding from the very beginning that you will not cover it all. You just won't cover it all. And on some level, you have to be okay with the fact that we're not going to get through all of the material, because in classical education, we actually don't think that that's the telos of our work. We don't we don't want at the end of the school year for the students to come back to us and say, I'm really glad I completed every single worksheet in the workbook and turned it in on time. They're going to come back and they're going to say, I loved this story, or I really understand now why adverbs are so, they won't say that, but they'll use adverbs, right? They'll suddenly, their writing will have changed because they have understood how the language works and how to use it creatively. And you will see that at the end of the year. And that's the goal. That's the telos, is that they are being changed. Not that we got through all of the material. So I think understanding that you won't get through it all, understanding the difference between chronos and kairos is also very helpful. And then understanding that that we really do want the students to be formed and changed, and that and that we're really laboring on the dawn of eternity. Like, we are here in time in a particular place, but the work that we're doing is really right there on the cusp of things that matter for all time.